Let's learn about reflexive pronouns. And remember, if you still need some help after this video, there are some extra lesson materials in the video description. So check them out if you need it. All right, so let's get started. What are reflexive pronouns? So let's start with the word reflexive. What word in English do you know that sounds like reflexive? If you said reflect or reflection, I would completely agree with you. And the word reflect or reflection, it just means to mirror back, right? Or to show back. And so reflexive pronouns are somewhat similar to that, okay? So they are objects in a sentence that will refer back to the subject, right? They just refer back or look back to the subject. So the important point in this lesson today is that we have to be able to find or identify the subject of a sentence in order to know what the correct reflexive pronoun is. So here are our reflexive pronouns, and I'm going to say them out loud one at a time, and go ahead and repeat after me to practice your pronunciation. Ready? Here we go. Myself, yourself, himself, herself, itself, oneself, ourselves, yourselves, themselves. And so an example of a sentence with a reflexive pronoun in it would be like, I drive myself to work. Myself is the reflexive pronoun. And if you take a look at that sentence, the reflexive pronoun is also the object of the sentence, right? I drive who? I drive myself. But unfortunately, reflexive pronouns are not always the direct object of a sentence. Sometimes they are after the subject, sometimes they are after the direct object. So let's take a look at some examples, and more importantly, let's look at why we use reflexive pronouns in English. So the first reason is to highlight or show that someone has personally done something. So the example I have here is, I called the restaurant myself. Okay, I called the restaurant myself. What I'm trying to say here is that I personally took care of this, so I know it is done. And in this example, you will see that myself comes after the object of the sentence. And again, that can happen. Reflexive pronouns don't always have a specific spot in a sentence. It depends on the context, and it depends on what we're trying to say. Another reason we use reflexive pronouns is to emphasize the subject or the object of that sentence. So here's an example of that. I myself am allergic to shellfish. Okay, so the myself here is emphasizing me, right? I myself am allergic to shellfish. I'm not worried or talking about anybody else at the dinner table, but I'm emphasizing myself. In the next example, it says, I talked to the waiter himself, and he promised me my food wouldn't be prepared near shellfish. Okay, so here we're emphasizing the waiter, right? I talked to the waiter himself. In a way, I'm kind of emphasizing him, and that again, I directly took care of that and did that by talking to him. Again, in this situation, the pronoun will come either after the subject if it's emphasizing the subject, or it'll just come directly after the object if it's emphasizing the object. Now, the last reason we use reflexive pronouns is to show that the subject is alone. And to do that, we need the preposition by. So we're going to use by plus the reflexive pronoun. So for example, I am eating dinner at the restaurant by myself. All right, by myself simply means I am alone. If I wanted to show that my mother was eating at the restaurant by herself, that's what I would say. She is eating at the restaurant by herself. If I were talking about my husband, I would say he is eating dinner at the restaurant by himself. Okay, if I was talking about you, I would say you are eating at the restaurant by yourself. Okay, so to show that something is alone, we just use by and the proper reflexive pronoun. Okay, so now let's take a look. What are the respective reflexive pronouns for our different subjects? So for I, we're going to use myself. For you, it's yourself. He, she, and it, it's going to be she, herself, he, himself, it, itself. So take a look here. We have self, and of course, self is singular, which makes sense because I, you, she, he, it, they are all singular subject pronouns. All right, let's move over to we, you, they. We is going to be ourselves. You is yourselves. And they is themselves. All right, and again, take a look at selves. Selves is plural, which again makes sense because we, you, and they are the plural subject pronouns. Now, I also want to point out right here that the yous are not the same, so we need to be careful. If it is singular you, it is yourself. If it is plural you, it is yourselves. So if you have this on an exam, make sure you're really understanding, is the you in the sentence a singular you, like you directly, or is it you plural, like you as in a group of people? All right, let's do some practice. So in a minute, I'm going to ask you to pause the video, but I want you to read this short story below. And what you can do is you can underline, you can highlight, or just simply write down the reflexive pronouns, okay, that you see. And I'll give you a hint. There are 7. So go ahead and pause this video and see if you can find the 7 reflexive pronouns. And when you are done, unpause the video and we'll go over the answers together. Okay, how'd you do? I'm going to read this story, and as I read through it, I will highlight the reflexive pronouns, and we'll see if you wrote those down. Here we go. Dara and her friend Jake went on a hike in the woods. They told themselves they would be careful and not get lost. During the hike, Dara saw a reflection of herself in a clear pond. They continued down the trail. Suddenly, a noise startled them. Jake jumped and looked back. It was a small rabbit that found itself in some old leaves and sticks. It jumped too, and Dara and Jake laughed at it and themselves. They decided to take a break and have a snack. Jake offered Dara an extra sandwich that he made himself. It was a ketchup sandwich. Yuck, Dara exclaimed, but Jake replied, I myself like ketchup sandwiches. They both decided to head home after the break, and they told themselves they would definitely take a hike in the woods again. Did you get all 7 of them? I bet you did. Let's do one more practice. All right, so here we have 6 questions, and I would just want you to fill in the blank with the correct reflexive pronoun. Now, if you need to go back to the video where it shows like I, myself, you, yourself, if you need to go back to that, or if you didn't write that down, I would go do that and then fill in the blanks here on this screen. Again, pause the video, and when you are done, hit unpause, and we'll go over the answers together. Remember, we cannot find the correct reflexive pronoun if we don't look at our subjects. So make sure you identify your subject, or you find the subject of the sentence, and then write the correct reflexive pronoun. All right, go ahead and pause. All right, let's see how you did. So let's take a look at number 1. My subject in sentence number 1 is going to be Jake and Dara, they. So what's the correct reflexive pronoun for they? It is themselves. And take a look here. We have by themselves. So again, that's telling us, we're using that to show us or to tell us that they are alone, right? On the hike, they went by themselves. All right, I'm going to read number 1, and I want you to repeat it because I do think it's very important that we practice our speaking fluency every time, every chance we can get. All right, so I'm going to read, you repeat. Jake and Dara went on a hike by themselves. All right, let's look at number 2. Dara. Now, Dara is the subject of my sentence, and if you didn't know if Dara is a girl or a boy name, so you weren't sure which reflexive pronoun to use, that's okay. I'll tell you that Dara is a woman's name. So Dara saw a reflection of herself. Again, I will read number 2. You repeat it for fluency practice. Here we go. Dara saw a reflection of herself in a small pond. Number 3, my subject is rabbit. Generally with animals, we consider that an it, and it is just one rabbit, so the reflexive pronoun should be itself. I'll read it, you repeat it. The rabbit found itself in a pile of leaves and sticks. Number 4, Jake. Again, if you're not sure about the gender, Jake is a boy, so for he, it should be himself. I'll read it, you repeat it. Jake laughed at himself for being scared of the rabbit. Number 5 is pretty easy. My subject is I, so again, we say I, myself. Good. I'll read, you repeat. I myself do not like ketchup sandwiches either. All right, last one. Now it's a question, but that shouldn't be too difficult. Our subject is you, and this is a singular you, right? This is a singular you. And so the correct reflexive pronoun is yourself, by yourself. All right, so again, have you ever gone hiking alone is what the question is asking. I'll read it, you repeat it. Have you ever gone on a hike by yourself? Excellent. So how did you do? Do you have any questions? If so, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. And if you feel like this helped you, please give it a like. Thanks so much for watching.